All right. Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Big East Coast podcast, episode number 24, 23rd of the regular season, I believe. Is that correct, Rob?
Um,
It's either 24 or 25.
I think we counted the first 10 previews as because it's once a week, and you figure there's been 15 weeks, so
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Regardless, episode number 24, here on Thursday, February 23rd. A few things got in the way of us podcasting earlier in the week, so it took up until now for us to take care of that. Sorry for the inconvenience, but we're here and we're ready to go. Before we begin our discussion of basketball and other assorted items, including a few things that went down yesterday in the conference that were certainly newsworthy, we must first touch on something else to start the broadcast here. Late last night, I'll start off the bat here. On Wednesday, Creighton University announced that Maurice Watson Jr., the senior point guard for the Blue Jays, who had been out since mid-January after tearing his ACL, had been suspended from all athletic activities. This was said to be because Watson, let me go back to the post here, for alleged actions that were contrary to university policies and core values that, according to the press release that Creighton issued out, he had been suspended on February 13th. It was then announced on the 22nd that the suspension was, going under effect. And per our friends at White and Blue Review, the team already had known about this suspension and were going on as scheduled. So it didn't come out of nowhere, as it came out of nowhere to the general public, I suppose you could say. And then late last night, around the hours of 11:30 or 12, the Omaha World Herald, the publication based out in Omaha, Nebraska, of course, that covers the Creighton Blue Jays, among others, reported that Maurice Watson was under investigation by Omaha police in connection with an alleged sexual assault. That this apparently, according to the report, took place in Omaha earlier in the month of February. This, according to the report, and I will quote the report here from Creighton's writer, whose name is John Niatawa. I hope I pronounced that properly. Let's see here. The Omaha police are investigating Creighton point guard Maurice Watson in connection with an alleged sexual assault that took place in Omaha earlier in February, according to a source with knowledge that a police investigation had been launched. Creighton announced Wednesday that it suspended the injured senior more than a week ago for an undisclosed violation of university rules. A young woman, a Creighton student who was an acquaintance of Watson's, accused him of sexually assaulting her, said the source, who spoke to the World Herald on condition of anonymity. No charges have been filed, and Watson had not been arrested as of Wednesday night. So that was reported late last night. Many of you may have missed that amidst all the hullabaloo and the fact that it was, released nearly at midnight Eastern time. And as the report mentions, Watson has not been charged or arrested yet. And if that changes, we'll be sure to keep you folks in the know. But for now, if you intend on discussing this issue, just keep things civil and think carefully before you, talk about that stuff, because it's an incredibly sensitive subject, and we at Big East Coast Bias Rob and I, while we've been running this show, have not been, tasked with talking about this. So
yeah,
certainly we'll be, doing our best to cover it as carefully and as delicately as we possibly can.
Yeah. But anyway,
to transition now away from all of that, to talk about the events that happened.
Let me just talk real quick, and I'm going to get headphones because I keep getting feedback over here. So
okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
So, from a basketball standpoint, yesterday was an incredibly busy day in the Big East Conference as well as across the country, really. You may have seen Syracuse beat Duke on a buzzer beater. Oregon beat Cal. They came back and won on the road. Dylan Brooks had another game winner as he did against UCLA earlier in the season. But in the Big East Conference, there were quite a few exciting things going on. And one thing in particular stuck out, and that was the fact that the Butler Bulldogs pulled off a rare season sweep of the Villanova Wildcats. This was only the second time since the reformatting of the Big East Conference that Villanova had suffered a season sweep at the hands of anybody. The first coming in the first year of the reformatted Big East to the Creighton Blue Jays and Doug McDermott. Of course, memorably, the first victory for Creighton occurred at the Wells Fargo Center when, Ethan Wragge and company shot the lights out, and then they were able to take down Villanova in Omaha later on in the season. So, and now, this time around, it's Butler who did the damage. They, of course, had beaten Villanova earlier in the season at Hinkle. And last night, were able to hand Villanova their first loss at the Pavilion since all the way back in February of 2013. Bryce Cotton and the Providence Friars having dealt that damage to them infamously on a last-second shot. And the thing that jumped out to me mostly about this win was the fact that Butler went on an 18-0 run at one point to take the lead and take full control of that game.
Yeah, and I mean, this wasn't, Villanova beating themselves because that's not something they do. Butler went out and beat them, man. I mean, Villanova left points. It's a free throw line. That's whatever. But, yeah, Butler was just a better team. And you don't see that too often in a game against Villanova.
No, yeah, because Villanova, as you've gone on to say at times, and I know I've agreed with you more often than I don't, that Villanova is one of the best teams in the country, if not the best right now. And especially,
yeah, and I think they still probably are. I mean,
one loss doesn't change anything. I mean, it's not like Butler's a scrub team.
No, and I don't think Villanova even drops down from the number 1 overall seed.
No, this isn't a situation at all where Villanova is going to be, they're not going to be hurt by this. Now maybe, if catastrophe happens, which I doubt, and if they lose another game and then don't win the Big East tournament, then maybe they'll drop down to the 2 line. But they're pretty safe as far as I'm concerned right now with the number 1. They'll still be fighting for the number 1 overall seed, so this isn't going to do too much damage to them. I think the story coming out of this more is what this win does for Butler.
Oh, yeah.
What it does for Villanova. And that isn't me saying, did Butler lose or did Butler win this game or Villanova lose this game? But I think that the main storyline to come out of this is now Butler, their resume gets an even bigger boost.
Yeah, I mean, they're a game and a half up on the 2 seed for the Big East tournament with 3 games to play. I mean, actually a game and a half up with 2 games to play. So they pretty much have it locked up unless they lose to Xavier and Seton Hall. Yeah, and I mean, Butler, I think, with a strong performance in the Big East tournament, which I know they haven't had in their time in the Big East. They haven't won a game there yet, but, that's not something indicative of what's going to happen this year. But, Joe Lunardi moved them up to a 3. I think if they make the Big East tournament final or even win it, they could possibly be looking at being moved up to a 2.
I think, personally speaking, just because of the rest of their schedule and some of these losses don't go away, I think the max is a 2 for them, but they'd have to win the Big East tournament and they'd have to win out. So they would have to, go on a winning streak from February 15th to, that Saturday night in late mid-March, whatever.
And then, we get into it's hard to beat a team 3 times, especially when the team is Villanova.
Oh, of course.
So,
but the Big East tournament is wacky, and they may even have to face Villanova. You never know.
Well, yeah. But Joe Lunardi did swap Kansas and Villanova in terms of the number 1 overall, but it's not something that matters because of where the regionals are.
Exactly. I mean, as long as Villanova doesn't completely pitfall, they're going to be playing in Buffalo, and they're going to probably be playing in New York.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much going to be locked in. Even if there are two, I could still see a situation where they've done enough to earn themselves a 2 in the East.
Well, yeah, because there's not another team that's going to come close to getting a 1 seed that would be better slotted in the Garden. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
if Louisville gets it, they probably would go to Memphis. Memphis? Is it Memphis?
yeah, in the South region would be
Yeah.
the only other team that I could possibly see snatching a number 1 seed in the East that would make a ton of sense would probably be North Carolina. And that's only because of the fact that, North Carolina is a national brand and their fans will travel literally anywhere.
Yeah, but they'd have to probably win the ACC tournament.
They would probably have to win the ACC tournament. I think they're going to end up winning the league outright in the regular season at this point, even with the chaotic nature of that league right now. They're 14-4. No, I'm sorry. They're 12-3. They're 2 games up on Louisville, Duke, Florida State, and Notre Dame. Duke, of course, holding the tiebreaker right now after a head-to-head victory earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm.
But UNC is the only threat, in my opinion, to usurp the 1 seed line in the East from Villanova. No, there's no real other team that I can see from just about any spot that could take them. And even with that said, you could make the argument that say, oh, well, maybe North Carolina belongs more in Memphis since Tennessee borders North Carolina. Yeah. Geographically, it might make more sense, but the committee doesn't have to. The committee doesn't have to worry about placing North Carolina anywhere as far as their fan base goes, because their fan base doesn't care. It's a national brand. Their fans will go anywhere.
Well, yeah, exactly. And
but yeah, I think Butler, their max is at 2, but they'd have to win the Big East tournament. Mm-hmm. But I would comfortably right now slot them on the 3 line. I think they've done more than enough to get themselves off the being as the best 4 seed, because now they have, as far as the AP top 5 goes, they have 3 top 5 wins. There's not many teams, if any, that can say that right now.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you even go back and look at Northwestern win. It's going to end up looking pretty good.
Yep.
Indiana probably not so much anymore, but you know.
The win on the road at Utah, Utah's not, fantastic team, but winning on the road, that's a lot more than than some teams can say. The Vanderbilt win is looking even better because they might end up being a tournament team.
Mm-hmm.
Their stock has been rising a lot lately.
Cincinnati's
a very good win too, because Cincinnati's going to definitely be a tournament team. They have 16 top 100 wins I saw as far as the RPI goes. I believe that's tied with Kansas for the most in the nation. So
yeah,
that's good.
I think the biggest thing for Butler too is Keelan Martin looks like himself again.
Yes.
That's been a thing the past couple games that he's been getting back to it, and they're getting back to kind of what they were in non-conference play, where they're this deep team with just a lot of ways to beat you. I mean, Andrew Schrebis last night, I don't know if anyone realized this, 4 points, but he had 8 assists and 7 rebounds.
Yeah, no, he was doing it all last night, very quietly, because like you said, only scored 4 points, but there were plenty of other areas where Schrebis was, succeeding a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, and it's good for the Big East too to get a team into the second weekend, the second team. Obviously you think Villanova's going to be there, but to get that second team there is definitely a huge step forward for the conference.
100%, and that's considering, Creighton and Xavier certainly looked like they were going to be, teams that could make noise, but they both have injury situations. Creighton has, everything going on with them right now. Plus, their play has been muddied a bit, even with all that said.
Yeah, we don't know. Right now Joe Lunardi has Creighton, Middle Tennessee, and then Florida State, who I don't think Creighton matches up particularly poorly against.
No, the tournament is wacky, but to have 2 teams in Villanova and Butler who have legitimate aspirations to make at least the second weekend, and if things fall Butler's way, it wouldn't be crazy to see them in the Final Four. I certainly wouldn't be surprised.
No, if you go again off Joe Lunardi here, Valparaiso, which would be a big game for Central Indiana.
Yes. It'd be pretty fun.
And they play St. Mary's or Cal, who I don't see giving them much of a problem.
No.
And then one of Syracuse, Minnesota, Baylor, or Gulf Coast. And I think Baylor's taken a step back compared to what they were. I think Butler could handle them too. So yeah, I mean, I know we're going to get into this a little bit later as well because we got a question about it, but I think you could definitely see Butler in the Sweet 16, possibly, as far as the Elite Eight.
I mean, if they play to the expectation of their seed line, if they get to the 3, then they can be an Elite 8 team. I mean, because they'll be matched up with the possibly the 2 in the Sweet 16, and if they outperform them, then they'll be in the Elite 8.
Yeah,
I mean, it's all when it comes to determining your expectations and whatnot. And then obviously it's wacky, but you have to just look at it from the perspective of, are they performing up to the expectations that their seed line gives them? And do I think Butler can play up to the expectation of playing as a 3 and even as a 2? Absolutely. I mean, I know this team has their fair share of clunkers, but I think the good absolutely outweighs the bad, especially considering the fact that, barring the losses to Creighton, they lost to Indiana State by 1. They lost to St. John's by 3. They lost to Georgetown by 4. They lost to Providence by 6. I mean, it's not like, they've gotten the doors blown off them multiple times in these losses.
No, those Creighton losses aren't particularly bad, and the Providence loss may end up not being too bad either.
No, it's really not. And we'll be talking about Providence in just a little bit too. The Providence loss, I mean, at first you think, okay, well, they probably should win against Providence, but winning at the Dunk isn't easy.
No.
It's not easy at all. I mean, Providence only has suffered 3 home losses all season.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's not particularly easy to go into the Dunk and win. So, Butler shouldn't necessarily be too hurt by that. And all their losses, with the exception of the clunker to Georgetown and the loss to Creighton, have all been on the road.
Mm-hmm.
You'd like to see your teams win on the road, but I think losses at home look worse than losses on the road, personally speaking.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah, so, I mean, if you're just getting back to everything else that happened last night, we could go on to Providence right now, who suddenly look like they might be playing their way into the NCAA tournament field.
Absolutely. Providence, they took care of Creighton 68-66, a rare win for a team going into the Clink.
But Providence has done it 3 straight years. They
have. The only year that they didn't was the year that Doug McDermott was there, and he got his, I think it's 3,000th point or something, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When he came close to a record or passed somebody on the all-time scoring list. But yeah, like you mentioned, they were able to beat Creighton at home. Only Xavier and Villanova and Marquette, now that I see, were able to pull that feat off. So
yeah, and I mean, you look at Providence picking up wins against Butler, Xavier, and Creighton in a row at a time where they're 4-8 and they were 14-11 on the year. They really could have used 3 wins. I don't know if anyone. I know you had the probability. I think before the Xavier game of their chances of running the table, right? And it wasn't high.
Yeah, let me.
If you could find that, I know Villanova's was at about 47%, which obviously fell through.
I know Sam had replied to that. So let me see.
Yeah, just while you find that, I mean, now you've got Providence hosting Marquette, hosting DePaul, and then going to St. John's. I mean, those are 3 winnable games that get you to 20 wins going into the Big East tournament.
Yeah, here we go. It was 4.6%, which, to be fair, was 5th best among the teams of the Big East.
And what was the date on that? Was that after Butler?
That was February 18th. So that was after.
That was after Xavier too. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
it was after Xavier. So,
but I imagine though, if you did it after Seton Hall with Butler and Xavier and Creighton all in a row like that, it probably would have been, lower.
Oh yes, absolutely. It absolutely would have been lower. And now, as far as win probability goes for Providence, according to KenPom, the rest of the way, they've got two essential coin flips against Marquette and St. John's. It's at 53% for Marquette, a dead heat at 50% at St. John's, and then hosting DePaul, they have an 88% chance of winning. So
yeah, they probably shouldn't have lost to DePaul that first time. That probably would have put them in a little bit of better shape right now.
yes,
But,
they would be they'd be 8-7 right now if not for that loss. But they're making a run, and I like you said, they could very well be playing themselves into the tournament at this point.
yeah, and I think especially if you look at the bubble with, Tennessee lost to Vanderbilt last night. They were considered a bubble team. You got Clemson and Georgia Tech, and I don't think either of those teams are particularly impressive. Providence obviously has work to do, but if they do continue to run the table and they're at 20-11 going into the Big East tournament, and pick up a win there, it's going to be hard to deny a 21-win team.
Exactly, yeah, because they would be 21-12 at that point with a win. That would look pretty good.
Yeah, and their non-conference schedule was nothing special, especially their non-conference wins. Your best ones against Memphis or Vermont.
Or Rhode Island.
But oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
Your eyes falling off a little bit. But even with that said, they went 10-3 in non-conference, and if they're able to scratch together 20 regular season wins and then win one in the Big East tournament, it's very hard to deny them. And teams with worse non-conference schedules or resumes have been led in the tournament before.
Believe me, if they get in, they're probably going to Dayton.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's not like they're going to get in and get a bye.
Yeah, I would be shocked if they weren't among the first four.
Yeah,
they'll definitely be Dayton bound if they do squeeze their way into the tournament, no doubt about it. But hey, all credit to Ed Cooley for righting the ship here after things looked bleak when they were 4-8 after the Seton Hall loss in overtime.
Yep.
That was a tough pill to swallow because they only lost by 2, and they were 4-7 after getting drubbed by Villanova at home. So all credit to them for persevering here, and I'm intrigued to see how this season plays out for them because they could very well run the table.
Yeah,
it's not crazy to suggest, especially with their schedule. If they get past that Marquette game, I know St. John's has been pesky, but look out.
And that Marquette game is it's pretty big for Marquette too, but I don't think Marquette's in as much trouble as other people seem to think. I know KenPom's not the ultimate thing, but it's hard to see a team in the top 35 not make the tournament. If you look at just the last couple of years, the teams that made the top 35, more often than not, you didn't see one miss the tournament. Creighton was 40 last year. That was the highest team to miss the tournament.
Yeah.
Just last year.
Yep.
So, you figure that, and then if you go to Bracket Matrix, Marquette is on 107 of 115 brackets. So I think Marquette's actually good enough where they could be talking about a bye where, Providence and I think Seton Hall would still be in Dayton as of right now. But they definitely helped themselves out last night by beating Xavier. And, they set themselves up favorably against DePaul and Georgetown to be no worse than 500 in Big East play.
Exactly.
Yeah, Seton Hall, obviously, Angel Delgado kind of did his thing last night. He's pretty good. What can you say at this point? I saw a lot of people saying it was a must-win for Seton Hall. It probably was.
It was.
And they did what they had to do. They took care of business. I think we have a question about this later, but I don't think I'm necessarily worried about Xavier missing the tournament. I think they should worry maybe about falling into that 8-9 trap where, you play a team that's equal to you, but then you're stuck playing the 1 seed next.
Yeah, you look at their resume, it's not splendid by any means. The fact that they've lost 4 in a row now puts them in a hole, to say the least. They don't really have many good non-conference wins, if any at all. But based on KenPom, Wake Forest was 16-12.
Yeah.
Utah at home, 17-10. I mean, and then Clemson also 14-13 and 4-11 in conference play. They don't really have much to really work with. I think that they're not going to miss the tournament by any means unless the bottom completely drops out here. But like you said, they're probably closer to the 8-9 line and maybe even a 10, which they could find themselves in a predicament there if that happens.
Yeah. What else happened last night? Oh yeah, Georgetown lost to DePaul for the first time in Washington D.C. since 1991.
Yep. DePaul had put themselves in position to win that game. They were leading at the half for the first time in a long time. That was their first road win of the season. Like Rob mentioned, it was the first win for DePaul in Washington, D.C. against Georgetown since February 3rd, 1991. A reminder, of course, that DePaul was not in the Big East at that time either. So it's been a while. And that was the only win that they had gotten in D.C. before last night. So,
you know what else I didn't realize until I saw DePaul's post-game notes yesterday? It's the sixth time this year that they've been down by double digits and come back to tie or lead, and they're 5-1 when erasing a double-figure comeback.
I guess the message is don't let DePaul off the hook.
No, I mean, and it's something I've said, and it's something I actually talked to the DePaulia about the other day. They're a lot better than people realize. I think, like I've said on Twitter, in a conference like the Pac-12 or the SEC, they'd be 4 or 5 win team.
I mean, it's hard to deny that, really. They certainly could. I forgot what the numbers were, but I know Andrew Catalon and Steve Lapis last night on the broadcast had mentioned their point differential in the first half and the point differential in the second half this year. And it was some ridiculous number. They were like minus 100 some in the first half and like plus 13, I think it was, in the second half. So they're a second half team to say the least. But the first half has just been,
Yeah, I mean, it's not good for Georgetown. I mean, their tournament hopes are done now. They weren't done. Now they are. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, they pretty much have to win the Big East tournament to get in. So even if they do, they'll be like a 11.
Yeah.
They're in pretty bad shape.
Yeah, which means we have a certain question that we need to answer later.
I mean, like I said last night in the recap, I don't know if JT3 is getting fired, and don't ask us. We don't know.
Yeah. Well, guess what? We did. We have a lot of questions today, actually, so we do need to pick up the pace a little bit here.
We do. News coming across the wire, though. News coming across the wire regarding a former Big East Player of the Year. And an aforementioned player that we already talked about on this podcast, Doug McDermott, is about to be traded to Oklahoma City, along with Taj Gibson, for a package centered around Cameron Payne, just according to the Vertical right. And looks like it's not the greatest deal for the Bulls.
It's kind of stupid. If you're going to make trades, trade Jimmy Butler to the Celtics.
Yeah.
If you look at what they're reportedly trying to get for Paul George, what the Pacers want, I mean, the Bulls could swoop in for a lot less than that. For Jimmy Butler is also better than Paul George. So, it appears Bulls also got Anthony Morrow. So
yeah, they got Anthony Morrow and they got Joffrey Laverne.
Anthony Morrow, who is not Anthony Tolliver, which is something I just thought for the last 10 seconds. So Anthony Tolliver is the one who went to Creighton, not correct. Anthony Morrow.
Correct.
Roy Hibbert got traded too.
Former Big East star Roy Hibbert.
Also Parks and Rec star.
And Paul George, as you just mentioned, is staying with the Pacers. Indiana has passed on all the trade offers.
Yeah, I mean, whatever, man.
Roy Hibbert is being traded to the Denver Nuggets, by the way, folks, if you're not in tune right now with Twitter, which you probably are if
you're watching this live, but you didn't check Twitter, which is the only place where this posted. Unless you check our site without checking Twitter, which thank you. I mean, that's
That's what people do. So
thank you for driving up our metrics from all sorts of channels.
yes, I agree.
What were we talking? Oh yeah, last night.
Yeah. I think
talked
we
about
touched on everything basically.
Marquette won the other day too. We talked about them. St. John's
Yes.
is still good. They've struggled a little bit lately, but still, this season is a net positive.
Absolutely. I mean, they've been up until the Marquette game. They've been alternating win loss, win loss, win loss, win loss, win loss. Now they're 12-16.
They scored a lot of points against Butler.
They did. They scored 86, which I believe, like you said, was the most points scored at Hinkle by a road team this year.
That is correct.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so that was cool. I mean, they gave up 110, but they scored a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, St. John's probably going to end up playing. There was a time when we thought they could probably get the 6, but they're probably not going to get the 6 in the Big East tournament now.
Yep.
The seeding is kind of starting to take shape
a
little bit. I mean, we know who the 9 and 10 are. We know who the 1 and 2 probably are. And then the middle's kind of a mess.
Exactly. But the middle is a mess.
Yeah. So this week, a lot of fun action on Saturday. Creighton gets to go to the Pavilion for Senior Day to face Villanova after a loss. So
Saturday is an absolutely incredible day for college basketball in general.
Yeah, if you liked last night, you're going to like Saturday.
Yeah.
What else is going on Saturday? Villanova. I know Seton Hall plays DePaul in Rosemont. The second to last game, DePaul game at the Rosemont Horizon.
And Georgetown plays at St. John's. That game we played at the Garden.
Yep.
So got that going for us.
It's just a rough look here. All 4 Big East games on Saturday are on Stat Broadcast.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, the Villanova one, there's a password, but
there's going to be, and the Butler one's going to be on Stat Broadcast also. So.
No, because they're in Cincy on Sunday.
Oh, yeah, never mind. Damn you, Xavier. You had Stat Broadcast.
They did. But, yeah, I mean, this week should be fun. A lot is at stake for the middle teams of the conference.
Yeah, it's going to be very high stakes for all of them.
Yeah, and then I think we got the full week off next week, and everyone plays next Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fun because conference tournaments start Monday.
Yep.
So yeah. Do you want to do questions? We want to look at brackets. We kind of looked at brackets a little bit.
We can do questions now.
Speaking of brackets, next Thursday or Friday, we are going to have our pal Chris Daubertine on the podcast, and we'll be in the same place doing it.
Fun.
So fun times there if you're into brackets. All right. You want to get those questions going?
Yep, I can do that. I can definitely do that.
Let's see.
Did you like all of them?
I think so.
Okay. When do they start? When do they start filing in?
Probably last night. I think yesterday afternoon. Yeah, yesterday afternoon.
Okay.
Tyler Ennis got traded too.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Also, Jim Boeheim told Dan Patrick he might be done after this year.
Huh.
What a shame.
I cannot seem to find the first question.
Well, you got to scroll back.
Jacob Padilla wants to know why we keep lying to everyone about when we're going to podcast, and he said he would take the answer off air.
It's tough, man.
Sometimes it is tough. Yes, schedules conflict and such. Let's see. Moving forward here. I believe you had started the questions earlier today again too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. First question from Claire, who wants to know what Butler's realistic ceiling is for March. Second weekend.
Yeah.
Final four. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on the draw, but I think, usually if you're in the top 4 seeds, it's a disappointment if you don't make the second weekend.
Yeah.
So, and it's pretty evident they're going to be in the top 4 because the committee already had them as the first 4 seed back when they did their thing, and nothing's really changed for Butler since then. I mean, if anything, it's gotten better. So.
Exactly, and as Alex Miller pointed out, if Keelan is a factor, they can beat anyone. So,
mm-hmm. Yep.
Certainly true.
Yep.
All right, next question from @StraightIllen48. Do you smell what the Rock is cooking? I've wanted to know the answer to that question for the last 20 years. I do not know the answer to that question.
Maybe we'll find it out, when he runs for president and everyone has to do the fact-finding type of stuff.
Exactly. All right, next question from Russ. Wants to know who we've got if all 10 Big East mascots were partaking in the Hunger Games. That's tough because Friar Dom would probably scare the living bejesus out of everybody. So
I assume we're not counting the live mascots because then it would probably be Blue because he is always hungry.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to take Friar Dom or I think Dib's a sleeper because he's a demon.
That's true.
So, people forget that.
Will D. Cat is also a good option because he's a freaking wildcat. So
he is. Yeah, I mean, I hope they do the thing with the mascots on top of the Empire State Building and such for the Big East tournament again.
Same here. Also, sneaky pick would be the Blob. Blob would also be a sneaky pick here.
Yeah.
First instinct, though, Friar Dome.
Yep.
All right. Here we go. Next question from Matt, who wants to know if JT3 gets another season to right the ship. Perhaps. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, it really. I think it more depends which coaches are going to be out there. Because I don't know what you think, but is Georgetown the type of place that you would leave, a relatively decent job to go? I mean, are they a power like they used to be?
It's a good question. Certainly the DMV is a rich recruiting area, so there wouldn't be any problems from that perspective.
Yeah.
Certainly as proven by, I know there's nepotism involved, but the job security there, it's pretty impeccable.
But I mean, also, if you think about it, the best job, if Tom Crean isn't fired in the offseason, is going to be Missouri. And you can disagree with that if you want, but I mean, Sam Snelling at Rock M Nation has spent the last 2 or 3 months just hammering out why Missouri is a much better job than people think. So, I mean, is Georgetown a better job than Missouri?
I mean,
maybe.
I think that the talent in the DMV is better than the St. Louis area, even though the St. Louis area certainly has its fair share of good players.
Yeah.
But whether or not it's a good job or not anymore, I think we have to see what Georgetown looks like without, John Thompson III as the coach.
Yeah.
Good job or not. Because if someone can step in there and still, recruit well and do all those other things, then then we can say, yeah, it's a good job, and it's not relying on its history, like say, to make a somewhat comparable comparison here to a program that relies on history a lot to Notre Dame, per se.
Yeah.
Football. You can't always just use the past to justify why a job is good.
Actually, I know Ohio State's thinking about getting rid of that motto, which would probably be a mistake, but do you think Ohio State's a good job?
Well, Ohio State's facilities are terrible.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's necessarily a very good job.
I mean, they're also, if you take the Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana kind of group them all in one, they're the 6th or 7th best team.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, for recruiting, that's tough. So, yeah, I was trying to figure out if they're a good job or not.
I mean, for a D1 program that, has such a good football job, it could not be any more of a there could not be any more of a difference between that football job juxtaposed next to that basketball job.
It's kind of like Texas, except Texas. Well, no, it is kind of like Texas.
I mean, yeah, but Texas, at least the Frank Irwin Center is nice.
That's true.
Value City Arena is awful.
That's true.
Value City Arena is a terrible arena, and I can't explain or understand even why Ohio State's basketball facilities have been so bad. Because since like 2007 or whenever Thad got to Ohio State, up until like the last 2 or 3 years, that program was really good.
They make back-to-back Final Fours.
They got to multiple Final Fours. They got to multiple second weekends. They played for a national championship in 2007.
Oh, yeah. They did.
I mean, yeah, with Greg Oden, they had, a lottery pick 2 years ago with D'Angelo Russell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know, and, besides him and, Greg Oden, unfortunately, things didn't work out for him. But, they sent Jared Sullinger to the league also. So I'm not sure why, Ohio State hasn't invested in their basketball program over the last, 10 years or so when they've been possibly at the peak of, I don't know offhand Ohio State's history as far as basketball goes, but I know since that's gotten there up until the past 2 or 3 years, they've been one of the top programs in the country year after year. So I have no idea why, their facilities are so bad, but they are. So, and like you said, if you take that whole grouping, I can't say they're better than Butler. I can't say they're better than Cincinnati. I can't say they're better than Xavier. I certainly can't say they're better than Kentucky or Louisville. So that's already 5 teams off the bat.
Probably not better than Indiana.
Probably not. I mean, if they're not, they're maybe just one step behind them, not a few steps, but they're probably not better than Indiana. No, they're probably not better than Notre Dame. So, I mean, I don't know what to I mean, are they even better than Dayton right now?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. It's a D1 program, but Dayton basketball is pretty darn good.
Yeah,
it's weird that you're saying that about a team in a freaking Big Ten.
Yeah,
like Ohio State, a program like Ohio State. But all right, getting ourselves back on the rails here, so we don't talk about the Big Ten too much. All right, our next question is from Anonymous Eagle. Creighton is 4-5 since Watson was ruled out for the year. Xavier is 3-2 without Sumner and with Blewett. Are these still tourney teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think
they are because of the entire body of work. But like I said before, Xavier doesn't really have much to cling on right now. So if they fall apart, I think their chances are a lot thinner than Creighton's are of making the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at least Creighton has a win over Wisconsin.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think they're both fine, though. I mean, I think they're both fine.
Yeah. They're both fine, but I think Xavier needs to rewrite the ship, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Writing the ship already. Next question is from Justin O'Reilly, who wants to know if Angel Delgado has a spot on an NBA roster in his future.
I mean, I think so. I know the NBA has changed where, big men don't necessarily matter as much, but I think, you get a guy who is just a high-quality rebounder who, I don't want to say necessarily Kenneth Faried, but I think Kenneth Faried's not the worst comparison for Delgado.
That's an interesting comparison.
I think his, absolute ceiling would be Kenneth Faried. But yeah, no, I think someone will grab him. I think it'll probably be after next season, though.
Yeah.
I don't think leaving this year would do anything for him.
Yeah, I think it would. We'll obviously see how that plays out. I'm certain he's going to test the waters, though.
Well, I mean, there's no reason not to test the waters.
Exactly.
With how they change the rules.
Exactly. All right, next question from Cam. How long after Georgetown's last game do they wait to fire JT3? Someone's going to spend over-under for that, I'm sure.
Yes.
All right, next question. I hope I pronounce this right. Do you remember how to pronounce his last name? It's Brendan.
I think it's relatively phonetic.
Dworzinski?
Yeah.
Okay. Brendan Dworzinski wants to know why Josh Hart is the second best player in the country after Frank Mason.
We don't talk about Kansas on here.
Opinions are subjective.
Yes.
Everyone has them. Frank Mason's a good player.
He is.
As much as we Mizzou alums hate to admit it, sometimes Kansas is a very good program. They won their 13th straight Big 12 regular season championship last year, or at least a share of it.
Yep.
But that's quite an impressive streak they're going on.
I think the biggest development for Kansas this year was Bill Self finally learned how to use a freshman.
Yeah, go figure. I mean, when you have a player talented like Josh, as talented as Josh Jackson, it's not very
well. Yeah.
But he has obviously whiffed on a few out there, but yeah, I don't know why Josh Hart's the second best player in the country after Frank Mason, but I can ask why Frank Mason's the second best player in the country after Josh Hart. So, all right, next question from CBB Talk, who wants to know if Kamar Baldwin is the most underrated player in the country. I honestly think that at this point, given the track record, that might be Angel Delgado, although I know you think that he's closer to Caleb Swanigan than I do personally. But the fact that Delgado goes unnoticed for the most part is somewhat criminal to this point.
Yeah, I mean,
what he's done. Yeah. I am a huge Kamar Baldwin fan, though, and I've gone on record of saying that.
Actually, I think a guy who might be a little bit underrated nationwide, and I can't believe I'm saying this, is Ethan Happ.
I don't disagree with that notion.
Yeah, I mean he's been really good this year, and on a Wisconsin team that I think has more or less disappointed a little bit, which is a strange thing to say about a team that's 22-5. But I mean they're not a threat, in my opinion, to maybe even make the second weekend of the tournament.
I agree. All right, next question from @real_Cameron. Cam Moron, as the display name says, does Quentin Gooden transfer if Edmund Sumner stays next season? This is an interesting question and not something that I had thought about. However, Paul Scruggs is coming into town this coming offseason, so playing time is going to be an interesting conundrum for Xavier at the guard position, especially if and when J.P. Makura decides to stay as well. I don't know if Gooden's necessarily going to transfer, but I guess I could say he's good enough to deserve a lot of playing time.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at their class next year, you have, at least according to verbal commits, 3 guys that are listed as shooting guards, which obviously, you get a little bit of versatility because I know Najee Marshall is 6'6", and, Elias Harden is 6'5", so I think Scruggs is the only guy who is kind of locked into playing the 2. But yeah, it is going to be interesting. I think they're planning on Trayvon Blewett not being there. First and foremost, based on what they have here. I mean, and then obviously you're still going to have some issue. I mean, Xavier's going to have to go small just based on what they have, but they have much more. They're going to have much more talent, at least on paper, than they have this year.
I agree. They'll have Contrevious Jones, who's 6'11".
Yeah, he's good. He's good.
Yeah. They'll have him in tow next year, along with Sean O'Mara as far as big men goes, and as well as Tyreek Jones and Kaiser Gates too, who's 6'8". Both of them are 6'8" actually. But there's going to be a lot of players on this roster fighting for a minuscule amount of playing time, considering the depth that they'll have, which is why I think Xavier's going to be better next year than they are this year, and I will say that with a lot of confidence right now.
You're not worried about Chris Mack leaving?
No.
Well, like I said, I think the only call that he should even entertain if it comes up is Indiana.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I don't think that he's going to leave Xavier anyway.
No.
But yeah, it's an interesting question. Not something that's really, I don't think, is being discussed a lot. But considering that Scruggs is coming into the fold, and if Sumner does come back, you figure they'll they could probably trot out a lineup. Let's assume for all intents and purposes that Blewett does come back. Then you have Sumner, Mikura, Gates locked in pretty much as 3.
Mhm.
And then you have, you can certainly put Gooden in there if you want to run like Villanova did when they had Arch and Brunson last year. That's certainly a possibility. But the question is, how small does Chris Mack really want to go?
Yeah. And I mean, part of the problem also when you have 5 commits coming in, I think Paul Scruggs definitely won't get the red shirt, but I think there's a chance that I don't think Contravious Jones is going to either, but you got Marshall and Harden and Ritter. I think there's a chance that at least one of them could get a red shirt if no transfers happen.
I guess, if you want to base it on star ratings, Ritter would probably be more likely since he's a 3-star compared to Marshall and Harden, who are both 4 stars. But, it's obviously not everything depends on how things play out, but it would be kind of insane if a 4-star player coming on a red shirt.
Yeah,
that's how deep they're going to be, though, which is crazy.
But also a 4-star player redshirting thing. I mean, it worked pretty well for Creighton.
That it did.
So
they had a 5-star red shirt.
Justin
Patton, in some circuits, he was a 5-star.
Yeah, he was. That was crazy.
It did work. It did work out for them, so they could follow that model. And they'll certainly be deep enough to sustain that kind of blow. Now, obviously, it depends on if Sumner comes back, if Blewett comes back too. I don't know. I think Blewett is likely to come back. If I'm just throwing a dart right now at the possibility and potential.
I think Sumner's a really interesting one because I think he's going to test the waters, and if you can get a team, with a plus training staff that's willing to draft him and just have him rehab there, obviously you'll take that instead of rehabbing at Xavier.
So like the Suns, per se.
Exactly.
They have one of the best medical staffs in the entire NBA.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the Suns are kind of, they have a lot of I feel like they have a lot of guards.
They have some guards. They do, yeah. But, yeah, I mean, that's going to be the interesting thing because I don't even know, and it's obviously way too early to even speculate on this, a timetable for when Sumner can play.
Yeah, exactly.
I think when they get hurt January, so November's not crazy in theory. I mean, that's 10 months.
No.
But it obviously depends how things go over the summer and whatnot.
Let me see here. On Draft Express, Sumner is the 5th ranked sophomore in the country behind Anunoby, Rab, Tyler Lydon, and Thomas Bryant. This was updated back all the way on January 17th. So there probably could be some reshuffling there.
Yeah, well, like I said, if you can get a team that'll draft you and help you rehab,
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think to get back to the original question, we're just gonna have to wait and see.
I did, but like he points out, like I said, it's an interesting discovery process. I think it's possible if Gooden doesn't think he's going to get the playing time that he thinks he deserves, because he's certainly played well in taking over for Sumner these past few weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, if you just want to go off again verbal commits and look at the positional breakdown, Xavier very similar to Marquette, and Marquette's made it work, so it can be done.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so obviously Marquette had to redshirt Sakar Neem, but I don't think you're going to have a 5-player recruiting class, and you're not freeing up 5 spots next year, so you're going to have to redshirt one of them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, yeah.
All right. Next question from Chris Thurlow, who wants to hear our first and second team all conference. All right. First team for me, I think it's pretty easy for me. I would say Jalen Brunson. I would say Josh Hart.
Yep.
I would say Trayvon Blewett. I would say Angel Delgado. And I would probably maybe lean towards Justin Patton, perhaps.
Okay.
I'm taking Keelan Martin's struggles the past few weeks into account, although he's sort of righted the ship.
Yeah, I thought you were going with Martin or Rodney Bullock.
Yeah, Bullock is certainly playing well. He's still up there on the all KenPom Big East team right now. He's fourth in the race because he does it sequentially. Bullock is certainly an option, but I will lean towards Patton just because I want a good big man. As far as the second team all conference goes, I would say Martin. I would say Bullock. I still like what Rodney Pryor's done at Georgetown in his first year after playing in the Northeast Conference for so long. He's sort of fringe for me now, though.
I think a guy that I would consider is Tremori Pons.
That's who I was gonna put Pons out on there because he's certainly playing extraordinarily well for a youngster. Definitely has a very, very solid shot of making winning Big East Freshman of the Year. If you like defense, and I know this has been a topic, I will put him on here. I'll put Kyrie Thomas on there. I have no problem with doing that. And I could even make an argument for Kamar Baldwin.
Marcus Foster.
Any of the other Villanova players. Mikal Bridges has been terrific.
Very good. Yes.
Kadeen Carrington, also a very good choice. I think the All Big East first team is going to be pretty locked in. The second team is I want to see people go to because there's only like 5 or 6 spots.
Yeah.
And a ton of good players.
And we should have ours out probably in the next couple weeks as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometime before the Big East tournament.
I agree.
I think Kieran Cartwright's a guy.
Yeah.
Good. So, yeah.
All right. And next and final question from our friend Ken EC at Ghost49. What's the Big East MVP race look like? Is Hart still the clear favorite? Who's 2 through 5? And he says that he thinks Delgado has to be close to number 2, but we hate Seton Hall. So
I have Delgado number 2, especially with how Caleb Martin kind of struggled a little bit. I think Caleb Martin would be probably 3 for me right now, and then Trayvon Blewett at 4. And probably Justin Patton at 5, I think. Obviously he's not tearing it up scoring-wise, but he is having an historically great shooting percentage-wise season. I know that doesn't mean everything, considering most of his shots are, inside 5 feet, but he does extend it once in a while, and he's shooting pretty well from outside too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Justin Patton could receive some votes.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Big East MVP race is pretty locked in with Josh Hart as number 1. The only contemporary that I was going to think about putting at number 2 that wasn't Delgado was Trayvon Blewett, but he missed a few games just recently. So
actually, Jalen Brunson could be up there too.
Also, do agree with that. But Delgado has probably started to establish himself as the clear number 2 in the conference. So yeah, even though we do, we are your number 1 Seton Hall haters. I do think Angelo Delgado is clearly the number 2 pick right now. Although Jalen Brunson is giving him chase as well as Blewett and to a lesser extent Keelan Martin, who is starting to weave his way back into being who he was.
I'm kind of glad we didn't get a Freshman of the Year question because I know I just put over Justin Patton, but I would have to give it some thought between him and Pons. And
I agree.
Marcus Howard is doing something that not too many freshmen nationwide have done in the past 30 years or so.
I agree with that.
In terms of his 3-point shooting. Yeah, I mean, no Big East freshman has ever shot 50+% on threes with at least 100 attempts. Marcus Howard's at 54. So,
yep,
he's been good. Yeah, so I think that's about it here.
That is.
Like I said, we'll be back next Thursday or Friday as we kind of dive into what will be the last Big East game of the year, and then maybe we'll do another one before the Big East tournament. I don't know. We're pretty busy Big East tournament week. which means we got a lot of good stuff coming for you. But
Yep.
as a result, we don't have a ton of time to do stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. So, thank you for joining us. For Chris, I'm Rob. Thank you for continuing to read Big East Coast Bias, and we will see you next week.